Hello everyone, heartiest greetings. I welcome you all to this refresher program organized by National Resource Center, Sri Ram College of Commerce. Today, through this module, I'll take you all through the intricacies of teaching through cases. Let's start with a challenge, juggling. So just to give you all the dictionary meaning of juggling, it is an art of manipulating one or more objects at the same time, most often using one or two hands or sometimes even foot, or continuously tossing and catching a number of objects into the air so as to keep at least one in the air while handling the others. Still decoding it? Now, rather than you deciphering the typical definition, what if I show you how to juggle with balls, real time, and ask you to observe the pattern and identify the base trick? Which is a better way? Of course, demonstrating. Mind you, 50% of learning remains with learners by the way of demonstrating. I can't resist myself from quoting one of the famous writers, Miss Carol Dweck. In her words, quote, "Love the challenges, be intrigued by the mistakes, enjoy the process, admire the efforts, and keep learning." Love the challenge as in the challenge to juggle. Be intrigued by the mistakes. Mistakes of not being able to toss and catch simultaneously or missing the ball altogether. One will admire and enjoy the efforts and process respectively only if the relevance of learning is clear, and only if this relevance is clear, the learning process will be continuous. Now let's go back to the times of famous fables and the era of Panchatantra. Remember Thirsty Crow? Or maybe the story of Hare and the Tortoise, or so as to say Monkey and the Cap Seller. As toddlers, we were narrated the story and were asked to derive the moral of that story. Trust me, it's about time we recreate the same learning process and methodology. We have to again learn to appreciate the art of storytelling, the power of deciphering morals, the power of examples, the power of scenario or problem-based learning. Strong connections of learning will only develop when the teachers organize the problem-based learning experiences and students start responding to them. So, the idea is to demonstrate the knowledge gained instead of just giving tests. Having said that, we as instructors and mentors really need to appreciate the ever-changing learning needs of our students and their different learning patterns. There are some who learn by the way of acquisition, that is, what they learn when they are listening to lectures, podcasts, or videos. There are some who learn by the way of investigation, that is, they like to explore, compare, and evaluate the texts and documents given to them. There are some who prefer learning via collaboration. That is, they embrace discussions built on acquisitions and investigations. There could be few who like to practice for learning, which enables them to adapt to their actions to the tasks, and they use the feedback to improve. Whilst there may be some who like to get into discussions, which help them articulate their ideas and questions, and likes to be challenged on their perspectives, and trust me, are in awe to respond to their challenges. Whereas there are few who prefer production, replicating and reflecting what they have learned. Today is the world of kinesthetic learners. Quote, "Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I learn." Unquote. This famous quote by Benjamin Franklin could be the motto for the kinesthetic learners. Out of these ever-evolved learners, kinesthetic learners are the ones that we have to deal with the most, especially these days and times to come. Kinesthetic learning initially was just a subpart of the entire process, but now it is the process. Sometimes these learners are misunderstood and appear to be fidgety, distracted, or unable to focus, when in reality they just can't wait to get started. They are so eager to dig in that is listening to all of those directions and instructions is just hard and boring. Let's face it, some tasks just won't appeal to this group of learners, at least not in the traditional way. So thinking out of the box and getting creative to grab their attention, and as you do that, you'll be glad you did it. Kinetic learners prefer learning by doing and solving realistic problems where they prefer hands-on approach. They desire taking breaks when focusing, and they suffer shorter attention spans due to their other engagements or positive distractions. For example, they may be getting live feed on the latest business news on the app installed in their smartphones and may feel that the ongoing class may not be giving him or her that information. We as teachers need to find newer ways of keeping them engaged so they learn and be with us in the process of teaching, learning, engagement. These learners like to study in short blocks. They like to take a lab class, go on field trips. They wish to study with others. So the best type of testing for them is short definitions, story-based learnings, MCQs, this is multiple choice questions, short fill-ins, and case study based learning. As per the National Training Laboratory main Bredel, a learning pyramid, if drawn, ranking the average student retention rates, where the top of the pyramid indicates minimum and the bottom of the pyramid signifies maximum, lecture is at the top of the pyramid, which means the retention rate for the average student is minimum, that is only 5%, followed by reading, which is 10%, demonstration 50%, discussion 60%, practice 75%, and the maximum retention happens when the students teach others, citing examples, and it stands at 90%. Now, we can actually observe a few obvious signs that we are truly making difference as teachers to this ever-evolved student force. You'll notice an ever-increased turnout. The strength of the class stays with you all through. You'll see that your students will start asking questions than just answering them. Your ever-shy students will start contributing without you prompting them. A student you once encouraged creates something new of greater value, reflecting and consolidating all that you have taught. Students start understanding the relevance of what is taught and start reflecting it real time. You will notice an ever-engaged scholar club relishing their learning journey. And to get to those signs of making a difference, there is a need to build a common ground to understand the difference between conventional and problem-based learnings. It can be as simple as writing shopping lists or writing on monthly budget plans, or to be more specific, let's say writing a marketing campaign for Pepsi and Coke for World Cup, or drafting sales pitch for their different brands, or let's say teaching entrepreneur trade theory, rather than asking questions about trade theory per se. We can ask them to identify traits of successful and established entrepreneurs like Dhirubhai Ambani or Azim Premji. In accounting, we can ask the students to analyze the balance sheet of the company real time and conduct the necessary ratio analysis for its performance matrix. Same goes for general management, HR, operations management, production management. wherein we can discuss the real cases, the real situations and solutions thereafter. All of these newer ways of instructing and scenario-based learning will lead to lifelong learning. That is, we instill in them the importance of being creative and problem solvers through and through which they learn the art of leadership, communication, and collaboration. The prerequisite of being curious and being reflective of whatever we have acquired in the teaching process is of absolute importance. Having said that, it intrigues me to reiterate how case methodology is one of those newer ways. Now, what exactly is a case? Case method is a powerful student-centered teaching strategy that can teach students critical thinking, communication, and interpersonal skills. A case is a replication of a real experience with problems to generate discussions. In simplest of its form, each case is a simulation of a real-world business problem wherein the case protagonist is the person tasked with solving that problem and discuss the nuances of each decision and the reasons behind it. Now, interestingly, there are essentially two benefits to this. Number one, case study learning can be far more engaging because one can have rich discussions with different perspectives and are willing to challenge each other's perspectives. And number two, obviously, there is an underlying theoretical concept to every case. Hence, the common case elements are, number one, spotting the decision maker who is grappling with some question or problem that needs to be solved. A set of underlying problems that the reader needs to identify while reading through the case. Here, the instructor may provide background information and accompanied data relevant to the case. It may include lecture notes, reading materials, and appendices, wherein the readers can utilize resources to solve the hidden problems. And they can do analysis individually or in teams, so they can rightfully brainstorm solutions and share the workload. Case method is also effective as developing real-world professional skills. Working on case studies requires good organizational and time management skills. Case method increases students' ability with written and oral communication, as well as collaboration and teamwork spirit. It forces students into real-life situations, training them in managerial skills such as holding a meeting, negotiating a contract, or giving a presentation, etc., etc. We must agree that every form of pedagogy has some advantages and some disadvantages. We can't really say that case study methodology suffers from no shortfalls. It does. If I talk about the benefits first, it makes the complex of concepts simple. Remember the juggling example? It exposes the participants with real life situations that are otherwise difficult and incorporate discussions on concrete subjects. Let's say, what if we are dealing with realistic human resource issues at a workplace like appraisals, bonus, firing? It improves the analytical thinking and help developing tolerance for different points of views on same topic, and it also helps in getting to know the ability to defend one's own point of view with proper substance and logic. We cannot undermine the power of one's imagination that cases develop. Visual impact of studying through cases is tremendous, and generally the cases that are discussed serves as ready references because they are real. However, on the flip side, it is not always easy to find cases relevant to suit all subjects. It's often said that case study, since it's written by someone else, it is someone's observation and perception and may suffer from natural biases in presentation of facts or maybe in the tonality. Case studies as a method of teaching is often criticized of consuming more time as compared to others. The idea of having no one right answer might often raise concerns on validity of solutions thus presented, as there are often more than one ways of looking at things. Hence, certain level of maturity is expected from the participants of the case class. Nonetheless, the advantages outweigh as the case study approach provides for experiential learning in the simplest way possible and is a great tool in learning program. So before going ahead, we need to understand that there are different types of cases. Now, cases may come in many formats, from a simple "what would you do in this situation" question to a detailed description of a situation with accompanying data to analyze. Whether to use a simple scenario type case or a complex detailed one depends on instructor's course objectives. There are directed cases, that is just review of course content with close-ended answers. Some are analysis cases that have underlying issues that requires analyzing the situation, proposed scenario, and the need is to trace the underlying effects, underlying facts, what happened, what are the series of events, how are the events unfolding, and the most critical ones are the dilemma or decision cases, where there is a decision regarding the proposed scenario and the protagonist needs to decide on an action with consequences. Cost and benefit analysis with execution, timelines, and risk mitigation plan. Now one may ask that why uses cases at all? Well, as I already recapped, more and more students are now inductive learners than deductive learners. That is, they learn better with examples than logical development. They want their learning journey to start from specific instances to generalized conclusions. This methodology has long been used in business schools, law schools, medical schools, and schools of social sciences like Harvard, Stanford, Yale, or MIT. However, they can be used in any discipline when instructor wants students to explore how what they've learned applies to real world situations. When students are presented with a case, they place themselves in the role of the decision maker as they read through the situation and identify the problem. They perform necessary analysis, examining the causes and consider alternative actions to come out with a set of recommendations. They're actually being trained to become consultants. And trust me, that's the end goal majority of us have. Imagine you want to learn swimming without going to swimming pool, or pilots want to learn flying without actually flying. It is possible via simulation, simulation of the real scenario. Similarly, tricks and tactics to solve real world business problems require simulation of real business world, and that can be best done through cases. Now, looking into the real relevance of teaching through cases with its due pros and cons, we need to understand as to how to get started with preparing for a case class. It's of real interest to us as teachers. So primarily, it calls for setting right goals and objectives. Before choosing a case, it is important to set your goals for the lesson, have a clear set of objectives, and be sure you want to accomplish in the case. What facts, principles, and viewpoints the student should cover. Next is picking the right case. The most powerful and interesting cases are those that allow for several assessments of the same situation, leading to several probable and compelling conclusions, each with different implications for action. Cases are narratives, situations, data samplings, or even statements that present unresolved issues. Hence, the information included must be rich enough to make the situation reliable, but not so complete as to close off the discussion or exploration. Cases can be short or brief for brief classroom discussions, or long and elaborate for semester-long projects. Good case studies focus on one issue or problem and have a clear problem statement. Therefore, select case studies that match your course objectives, allowing students to apply what they learn in the course to that scenario. As instructors, we need to know all the issues involved in the case, prepare questions in advance, and anticipate where students might run into problem. Within the case, we need to trace where is the debate. You need to frame that fighting issue because that's where the action is. Ultimately, the two parties to the case engagement are the teachers and the students. Therefore, expectation setting is really critical. For this, now here comes the top tip. At the beginning of the module, establish an explicit agreement with the students by showing your expectations of their performance and that of yours. Fundamentally, there are few critical elements for any effective case class. The topmost priority here is, as I already mentioned, that an instructor needs to identify the relevant learning objectives, which is the center of any effective case class. As in, what are the key principal learning objectives of the class? What role does this class play in the overall course module, and what outcome is likely to be? As in, do you expect to instill depth of knowledge or developmental of judgmental and analytical capabilities of the students? We as instructors also need to gauge the right opportunities and possible challenges in order to have a seamless case class. Look into what are or may turn out to be compelling points of tension which may disrupt the entire flow of discussion, especially dealing with cases related to polity or cultural biases. We need to look into the points that are potentially surprising or may have counterintuitive insights. But before all this, it calls for a lot of self-reading, self-analysis, discussions among fellow colleagues, which is only possible when a coherent group of fellow instructors exists. A lot of preparation needs to be done on the class setup and its design and structure. That is, if it is possible to change the seating arrangement in your class, a horseshoe-shaped seating arrangement, that is U, works the best. The open part of the U should face the blackboard. This arrangement permits all of the students to see one another. You don't always have to be in the center of that U. You can move out of that horseshoe altogether when the students are talking to each other. We need to ponder upon what must be the pieces of analysis, the right sequence of the discussion. That is, the right transitioning from one discussion posture to other that needs to be followed, especially in the light of topic being taught and discussed. And with this comes the relevance of a well thought board plan. Now, what exactly is a board plan? A right board plan is a white, green or a black board plan which structures the entire case tactically and has spaces and parking lot for all the ideas to be parked, which may later be discussed in the light of case analysis during the discussion. Use the blackboard to bring the discussion together. Writing comments on the board is a way to engage students, showing them that they've been heard. Drawing circles, arrows, underlining to connect these comments is a way to link fragments of discussion into a summary of what's been said. The key takeaway here is that depending on the course objectives, you may plan the case to unfold in a systematic way so as to encourage students to follow a sequential approach to their analysis. For example, what is the issue? What is the goal of their analysis? What is the underlying context to the problem? What are the key facts that should be considered? What alternatives are available to the decision maker? What would you, if you were the protagonist, will recommend and why? One may also, to interest the students, can encourage role play. It is an innovative approach, that is, the part the students can play of the people who are involved in the case, which not only engages the students but also forces them to really understand the perspectives of the case characters. Also, it is always in common interest to accompany the case with readings, as if the case are paired with reading assignments that introduces or explains a concept or analytical method that applies to the case, it becomes more effective. The amount of emphasis placed on the use of reading during the case discussion entirely depends on the complexity of the concept or method under the case discussion. For instance, if it is a straightforward case, the focus of discussion can be simple analytical results. That is ratio for ratio analysis. However, if the method is more complex, the instructor may need to walk the students through its application and the interpretation of the results. For example, BCG matrix for corporate strategy and SPU planning, it requires adequate logical development first and then the specific instances. And now for the students. As we talked about teachers, what should students do to prepare for a case class? Intriguing point here is that how students should be prepared for an effective case class. Here, the topic again comes handy, establishing an explicit agreement with the students by showing your expectations of their performance and that of yours. We as instructors have responsibility to reorient their study habits by emphasizing on examples so that even if the instructor forgets to quote one, the learners are always keen to look for them. Unfortunately though, there is no nice proven procedure for studying cases which can be recommended to the students. There is no fixed formula, no fail-safe step-by-step technique, as each case is a new situation and students will need to adjust accordingly. Moreover, after a time when they keep practicing, they themselves discover an approach which suits them best. Point to remember, we need to instill here the importance of practice. Practicing more, reading more, more and more as one of the key ways of learning. However, it goes without saying that a case assignment emphasizes student participation and the effectiveness of the class discussion depends highly upon each student having studied the case beforehand, which means before the actual discussion and debate. We can still make sure to give quick tip to the students to crack it like a pro. Firstly, we can ask them to read the case quickly for the first time, no note taking, just in the flow to get a sense of the problem, the industry and what information the case holds. They need to check out the exhibits, appendices and the central problem. and read any supporting notes, articles thus provided. Post which, with a broader perspective on the case situation, they can read the case again in detail. At this stage, they can make notes and make links among the details in the case. We have to encourage them to become the decision maker and develop a stand on the issue. So they ask themselves some key questions such as, who are the protagonists? Who must take action? What is at stake? Ask questions about the business. What is the business model? What are the products and services involved? What is the structure of the industry? What competitors are there? Which then leads them to define the problems and issues and analyze the data which is given. The student must also be encouraged to take a stand on the point of view and have analysis to back it up. Given all these, in the end, we as instructors should support their conclusions and must also be open to new insights, as cases have no right or wrong answers.